Okay, so for this week, our task was to explain the applications of each data type and provide specific examples for each data type. So, um, there were three different data types: primitive, collections, and objects. The first one, which is primitive, for the most part, primitive data types are integers, floats, boolean, text, um, date and time, lists, arrays, and tables. Um, to start with, or integers are whole numbers, which can be used for example for user IDs, keeping track of inventory, um, and things of that nature. When we start talking about floats, we're talking about numbers that consist or that have decimal points. So, for example, if we were talking about money, because money has a decimal point, when you actually code it, you would, instead of setting it to an integer, you would set it to a float, so that your math would come out correctly. This would be good for keeping track of money, applying discounts. If the discount is a percentage, then you would still probably convert it to a decimal point. For the math, anytime you're doing anything that has to do with ratios with your um, information. The next one was a Boolean, which are true and false statements. Basically, this is good encoding for conditional statements and loops, which would translate into um, the business data if you were to set, if you were programming something that needed to trigger change. For example, the conditional statement or one of the conditions could be that a user must also be a member. So it would say something like, is user member? And if it was set to true, then we could apply a discount. If it was false, so say if true, apply discount, else charge full price. So basically, the true or false would trigger what happens in the loop, or would determine what would happen in the loop. Text, when it comes to coding, is set to a string, which can be any input or output that is just letters. So if you are wanting to express or write something that is in text, or print out something that is in text, just letters, or if you are wanting your user to provide you with information that can only be letters, you would set it to a string. For example, if you were filling out a form and you needed a name and you wanted it to have a name, then you would require it to be set as text or a string. When we talk about date and time, this could be useful for keeping track of registration dates or the start and stop time of a ride. So it's good to basically log the time of something, of an event. Collectives. Collectives are lists, arrays, and tables. Those are the three that I chose to talk about. A list could be used to log information in both an ordered list or an unordered list. So if you have an unordered list of information, that's just random items on your list. So it could be just people that you randomly had subscribed to your maybe to your blog. Um, then if we had an ordered list, you would have, basically, you could keep track of who subscribed to you first, the first subscriber, the second subscriber, the third subscriber. Basically, they're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to be listed in order. And then you can also access those, your list, based upon the order, which is similar to an array. So the next one is an array, which is a list of properties that can be accessed by its index. This is good for things like passwords and login information, because of the fact that you can access each item of your list by its location in the array. So if you wanted to have the first one, maybe the first item on your list in your array would be at index 0. So when you went to access, if you want to access whatever's in that slot, you can access it by index 0. Tables are good for logging multiple lists of information, that has something in common. For example, you could have a username column, and then the next column could be user password, and the next column could be the user email address. Because of the fact that they're all about the same user, they would be on the same row, but you could still access, for example, the first column, which would be all of your users, or the second column, which would be all of the user passwords. When we talk about objects, these are basically instances of a particular group of properties. So, for example, if you had a group, if you had a user that you could name your object R1, which would, or U1, user 1, and it would have the properties of the username, the user password, and the user email. It would also have functions that would allow this user to perform different tasks, meaning one of the functions could be log in. You could have a function that could allow them to do something like maybe access your products online, or report issues. These are things that the object can do. So an object basically consists of properties and functions that are all assigned to one thing or element. And that is it.